welcome the Mayor of Copenhagen, the Lord Mayor of Copenhagen, Sophie Hæstorp Andersen. Nice to see you. Xavier Dommange, who runs Coeur et Canopée. And we're going to talk more about exactly what Coeur et Canopée means. And Isabelle Spiegel, who is an amazing engineer, runs Adaptation for VINCI, who a lot of people will know. Welcome to the stage. Thank you, everybody. Grab a seat over there. Now, I tell you what, I'm thirsty, so I'm going to grab myself a little bit of water while I warm us up here, and then let you guys do your own. Hopefully we don't spill it all. There we go. So, look, I want to kick off with the view from cities. The work we do in cities affects more people than anywhere else. Dagur, what does adaptation mean to Reykjavik?
Well, when it comes to adaptation to climate change, two things are the kind of biggest on the radar and the agenda. Rising sea levels and extreme weather. Some would say that we have had extreme weather always. Mm-hmm. We have 4 different weathers in a day, so we're kind of used to that. But our sewer systems are not necessarily used to extreme rain. Mm. And it's different for different part of the country as well. So I think the task here is to do something about it before it happens. Mm-hmm. And have it in mind when you're planning, designing, and doing public works. Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge, but we can learn from others, like Copenhagen, mm-hmm. that is one of the cities that have had kind of 100 years incidents a lot of the time in recent years. Mm. So this is coming, and I believe in nature-based solutions, mm-hmm. And trying to use the trip to make the city beautiful as well. Mm-hmm. And before coming a mayor, I was a physician. Mm-hmm. So
there is such a huge health element to what we're talking about.
Yes, because if you have a beautiful, attractive city, it makes you move around. It makes you happier. You meet other people. So it's a lot of kind of public health benefit in doing it right as well.
Sophie, Lord Mayor of Copenhagen, obviously Dagur mentioned acting before it happens, but we're already seeing it happen. What does that mean in Copenhagen?
In Copenhagen, it means even more cloudbursts and storms, and it also means that we have to secure the city from the rising sea levels, because what we see is that sometimes after a storm has pushed all the water up in the Baltic Sea, it turns around and comes back even more, and then we get flooding. And then we get flooding in Copenhagen and a lot of our shore lines in Denmark. So already in 2011 and in 2012, the city started adapting to climate change with the first very comprehensive plan for cloudbursts, and next the climate adaptation plan, and then we went on to take on the storm surges with a big plan for how to adapt to not only cloudbursts but also to the rising sea levels. Mm-hmm. So we've been going around now for a couple of years, I must say, also before my time, but we still have a lot to do. And as we see all over the world, storms and extreme weather is becoming more and more something that we see not only once a year or once 10 a year or once 100 a year. It becomes something we do every year or every month.
So we saw with in Victoria's presentation how Tahir in Jordan was using ancient knowledge to try and manage these extreme water flows. Just dig down a little bit, pardon the pun, into what are some of the solutions that you've implemented, for example, cloudburst?
When it comes to cloudburst, one of the reasons that I call it a very comprehensive plan is because we are doing private-public We're working together with private and public companies in order to make this plan work. And every time that we have to think of a new solution, we think recreational spaces in the city. So that means that even when more people are coming to the city, we try to make the city more livable at the same time as we are adapting to cloudburst, for instance. And that means that right now we have made a recreational park just in the area where I live, where you can play all year round, but when it rains, this is where we collect the rain, and we use the rain to water the grass or the green areas during the summer. So we have tried to come up with ideas that are not taking space from people, but actually thinking people into the cloudburst plan. And that means a lot to the Copenhageners regarding livability and healthy city life, because I agree with Dagur that when you get to experience also recreational and means that the Copenhageners don't even see that there is a cloudburst plan just underneath or underneath the surface or in their park. They just do it. But it also means that a lot of our apartments and buildings are being saved from water in the basement. And that means also healthy living for the people who live in them, because the worst part is when you see normal, healthy buildings being torn apart by damaged by water and all the things that comes afterwards.
So you hinted at something really important here, and that is the quality of life. And there was a phrase Victoria used in her presentation, intangible metrics, which is where I want to bring in Xavier. Trees. Tell us about the work that you're doing with trees and why it's so special.
So we are Coeur and Canopée, Heart and Canopée. It's a French company, so we create microforests into urban areas. And it's a biomimicry approach where we take inspiration from local old forests to find the composition of what we're going to plant back. And we plant this forest in a participatory way. And so we say we bring two values, the microforest itself, which becomes an island of freshness and biodiversity in town, and also the experience of planting, where we have a pathway to get people interested into the planting. At the first workshop, we propose free food, because that's what can make people come. And if I do my job well, then they come for the second workshop, even if there is no food. And if I do my job well again, then they come planting, even if it's pouring cats and dogs. And once they have planted, they want to get involved in the maintenance. And in these two values, so there is a very practical thing of planting trees, and there is this intangible part, which is the enthusiasm, and which comes from the understanding that there is purpose in doing what we do the way we do. And for us at Coeur et Canopée, this is the biggest value we bring to people. We want them to get in touch with the living, understanding that if they are touched by holding a little oak, which is 20 centimeters big, which can become a 40-meter high tree, well, there is a special experience in taking care of this, and that's what we want them to experience. Going back to the measurements, like we are often asked to know, like, how much carbon do you store in your forest? And we tell people, well, we store carbon in an amazing way, but it's very tiny. So we'd like you to consider like bringing more values, like draining the water, like regenerating the soil. And then people come back and say, okay, so how can I measure the fact that I take good care of the water? And a large company came to us and asked us, like, how can we put sensors? And we tell them, well, you don't need sensors. You need sensors to prove on the paper you're doing right. But if the living is coming back to your area in the similar composition as in nature, then it means that all your parameters are green. And so you don't have to go check point by point. You just need to make sure the life is coming back in a robust way.
And you know, there is a very interesting discussion around why historically a lot of our environmental efforts had been focused on reducing carbon because it is measurable, when actually carbon is this very incredibly carbon concentrations to the ordinary person. You can't see it, you can't touch it, it doesn't mean anything. And what you're talking about is actually something that is much more connective and emotional. And which is interesting, because your background is an engineer.
Yeah, and I think I like a lot the engineering. I think the biggest stuff I've learned is the 80-20 law, which means even if you don't make the whole effort, you can have a very significant impact. And that's what we do in our forest. We just bring little things back, but there's a lot coming back in terms of ecosystemic services. But it's been also a journey to go from, okay, technology can make a lot of good, to what we need is something about the living, about our relationship to the living, to the non-human living, and also in between us. And that is the thing we need the most, I think.
So, we've had if we think about the kind of triangle of change, governance and politics, people and activism, business. You're also an engineer, or work for an engineering company. You're the guys that actually have to make this adaptation work. You're the guys that are building new stuff, retrofitting old stuff. What does adaptation mean for VINCI?
Yes, huge question. So indeed, so we cannot work alone. But the way we are trying to address this challenge is indeed by being proactive. And a large company like ourselves is lucky because we have two key areas of expertise or of activity, which are to build, yes, so we're building infrastructure, but we also operate. So meaning that climate change is already active and impacting us in a negative way on our motorways, airports, and other mobility infrastructures. So for ourselves, we have to definitely make sure that we know how to monetize the risk, but also adapt and prevent the damages to happen, or at least be ready when an extreme weather event is happening to get back to the normal case as soon as possible. So that's one thing that we can experiment with our own infrastructure, I would say many things. But bad news is that when we are in the built environment, where our role is to be a contractor, we are following our clients. And so far, there are only a limited number of clients, public-private, altogether, who are actively asking us to be precise on the way to address future climate change events. So we are definitely lacking of an economic model here. So putting effort, in terms of prevention instead of repairing, that's something that is not natural, and we need to work on that. So the way we're trying to do is really to say, well, for ourselves, it's some skill set that we already have. So like putting gravels and sand together to build road or buildings, well, we can do that to build gardens. So we need to add the water flow. Well, that's something that we do when we build sewage and water pipes, etc. And then biodiversity and nature is something also on the top, but we also have skill sets. So how to put this expertise that we have as an engineering company indeed together to build some new solutions and to be proactive in the way to present them to a client. And to say, so it's for instance Rêve-Îlot, Rêve-Îlot, it's a French name, but a dream of a freshness island for cities. And by doing that, so it's definitely sitting between cities like you guys, but also solutions like Coeur and Canopée to put together in the same project, in fact, the multiple benefits of environment. Because one burden that we have is that sometimes we try to think with disconnected brains on the different topic, and mitigating climate change and specifically adaptation to climate change risks means that we need to put together water, soil, solution, nature-based solutions, so to really have carbon sinks in the soils and nature, biodiversity as well. And for sure, on the top, you have also social and economic benefits and advantages.
And you're a large organization. How some organizations of your nature have done, for example, really clever things with governance, put nature on the board. Nature is a board member. How do you take your own internal responsibilities?
So we did it. So our huge conviction is to say that environment and sustainability has to be part of every single thing we do. So I'm the head of environment for VINCI. I'm sitting at the executive committee level, meaning that I represent that. But then at the operational level, the leader of operation, the managers, has to bring together social, economic, environment with the different areas. Meaning that an adaptation, that's not an easy one. Because we can see the risk approach. We can imagine some opportunities, but as I was describing to you, it's limited in terms of number of cases of clients actually asking us to build something or to spend money for adapting the current or future infrastructures and cities.
Right.
So meaning that we need to put a lot of learning into the loop, and we developed a tool, for instance, which is how to visualize the effect of climate change for our own employees, but also to be able to use it in front of the clients. To say, by being proactive...
You're trying to push both your internal discussion and suggest to clients, have you thought about it this way?
Exactly.
Have you thought about it that way?
So it's one by one to say, well, we need to change. So our role is to, well, okay, if a client does not want to consider environment and climate change, etc., maybe just because he's not aware, not only of the problem, but also of the solutions. So we said, okay, let's put it in our hands to raise the level of awareness of our clients and people working in this ecosystem environment, but also bring some tangible solutions, because part
people
of
want
the solutions,
answers.
definitely at least 80% of the solutions are already existing and in our hands.
Dagur.
Yeah, if I can maybe address a need for a new economic model here.
Yeah, and the role of government in providing, making that happen, right?
Because, I mean, in the discussion about climate change, we often have kind of concepts and thoughts that people see as very abstract and kind of far away. But when it comes to adaptation, it's very real. And it's such a clear example of if you don't do anything, there will be immense cost. What's interesting about this cost is that it's to a huge extent on individuals or individual companies, private parties, but the solutions need to be on a city scale or kind of a regional scale, and it's very often very capital intensive. So how can we do this? I think that we need kind of also to adapt the politics of investment and put cities in more focus when it comes to channeling funds. In the recent years, we've seen national governments going from very much focus on climate change to COVID and Ukraine, and these crises are big and very important, but cities are sitting there with a lot of responsibility. They are dealing with the floods after they happen, but we need kind of city activism, and we need direct fundings, international banks or instruments to channel funding straight to cities to deal with this. And national governments have to understand it.
And so take obviously, there are global frameworks for biodiversity and carbon. There are national and supranational in terms of EU guidance. But let's take Iceland nationally. To what extent are you, is the government of the local government of Reykjavik empowered to mandate when it comes to construction projects? You want to see X, Y, and Z. And how much more power do you need to be able to insist that these things happen?
When it comes to regulations, we can kind of lobby for them. And when we prepared for earthquakes that we need to do in Iceland, we were quite successful decades ago to put into regulations how we kind of build houses to be prepared. So we need regulations, but we also need just hard cash to change the infrastructure, to rethink a lot of things. And their cities are alone. In Iceland, in Denmark, all over Europe, mayors are discussing the need that the European Union channels direct funds to cities. We are discussing on a global scale kind of international financial institutions that focus more on cities. And what private partners need to realize, and companies, is that if cities are not empowered and able to do this, the cost will end up in single homes, at kind of the balance sheet of companies, because these solutions are local. These are real things that happen in between houses, in citywide, or at a regional scale.
Sophie?
Well, I know that when you look at the area of cities, we only take up 2% of the world. But when you look at the amount of people and the amount of emissions, CO2 emissions that comes from cities, cities are both part of the problem, but we're also part of the solution. And what we have seen in Denmark and in Copenhagen is that water knows no boundaries. And often we have to work together with lots of municipalities around Copenhagen in order for us to make an impact, or with the government, or with others. But we also need to, when it comes to financial, to work with the local people who own the land, and to work with the people who work with the companies who supports us, for instance, with clean water or energy or stuff like that. And in Copenhagen, we have made what we call the Energy Leap. It's a program where we took in all partners that works with energy within the area of Greater Copenhagen. And together we looked at what kind of possibilities do we have if we are supposed to lower the energy that we use, and if we're supposed to do it more green. And together we managed to save both private and public 10% of all energy in buildings. And that is a way for us, trying to get more financial, work together, so that it's not only the public city that's doing something, but that we're actually doing with private partners as well. We're doing the same now on biodiversity. I took all the people who own half of the land in Copenhagen, invited them into the table, told them we have to do something about biodiversity, we have to build more. I call them pocket forests or pocket parks. And we have to do more to get, more recreational areas for the people and make it more livable. But we cannot do that alone as a city. We have to do it together with the people who are actually part of the situation, also part of the problem, but also part of the solution.
So Dagur mentioned we have to rethink financing.
We do.
Have you seen enough change in access to green finance? Because government can access money in a way that nobody else can.
They can, but sometimes they're also a barrier. For instance, in Copenhagen, if we really need to get into the goal of being a climate neutral city, we need to have carbon storage. And right now, there is no business model for carbon storage in Denmark as such. And I'm glad that you're working on it in Iceland, and I know they do it in Norway and other places. But this is just one issue that we need to actually make into effect. We need to also make it more profitable to actually plant trees and to have people want to do it by themselves, and not only when the city comes with money for it, because then it becomes a very expensive solution.
Xavier, trees trap carbon. How are we going to find ways to audit and value those softer things in a way that they are still currently hard to put in a spreadsheet, so that the carbon accountancy machine starts to value it so we can invest in it?
Tough question. And I don't have the answer. I will evade it as...
If anyone's here that does have the answer.
As clever as I can. No, but just to... it's not the... in my view, so we are small. But in my view, it's not the carbon that will change the thing.
Right.
Just a short example. We had a school playground. Too hot. 2022, the kids cannot go out. I'm put in touch with the directress, and she says to me, well, we can make a microforest. We ask for subvention, and it's refused. So I was like, what? You're refusing me this project, which is obviously needed and can bring... And yes, sorry, we cannot. And I said, okay, I'm going to find some way to make it, and I will invite you to it. And I didn't know how to do that, but a few days later, I meet an entrepreneur who has a pizzeria. And he says, like, I'm about to make something about CSR, and I tell it, I'd like to plant trees. And they're like, well, we have a project just there. And just little by little, we went with this pizzeria man, with this public work company, which was very small. We went with a large group around. We went with the city, which said, we cannot give you money. It's okay, you can lend us tools. And so the directress was fantastic, the pizzeria man was amazing, and with all these people, we have managed to finally make this forest like 8 days ago. So this links very much with what Victoria was saying just before. There are things we can do with what we do every day, and we don't have to make something which is like developed on purpose for this. If we just bring what we're good at, we can certainly do it. And we don't have to wait for the subvention. We don't have to wait necessarily for the money. We just need to meet the people who wants to work with us. And when you find these people, go. It's my way to evade the question about carbon.
Isabelle, answers, solutions, ideas. You're at the heart of looking for some of the most innovative solutions. I know you've been wandering around here going, oh, that's a good idea, and that's a good idea. Not wanting to get you to back anyone's particular startup here, but I just want to get some ideas. What's exciting you at the moment in terms of adaptation? What is the stuff that you think might really shift the dial?
That's a very interesting question, because what's exciting is that it's not too late and we can act, definitely. So exactly like Xavier just told, there are enough people motivated about change and solution available that, okay, just do it. So every day we can
don't wait for perfect.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of my big messages indeed. Because if we wait for every barrier to be overcome, etc., we will be too late. So action every day, that's really what motivates me. And when I see a lot of energy like here, well, that's great. Now, the real question of not having an economic model on adaptation is still key. And we need to also act on that. So I'd like to join forces, and we have a working group trying to address that by different angles. One is the insurance. Yes, insurance companies have a role to play in helping find the right economic model for preventing again instead of only repairing the damages. And well, I'm happy to still keep the discussion alive with public-private partnerships as well. Because this kind of tools and way to address some problematic or some problems is really already happening for climate change. We have, so in case of reducing the emissions, we have maintenance contracts that help to maintain first some utilities, but also manage the energy consumptions and now manage carbon emissions as well. So the same way we did that, and for some municipalities, etc., in a term of contract, which means where it's a partnership, we are ready to invest together, but also build and operate. That's the way to think about that. For adaptation, I think we should really open to innovative ideas like that. So not only the technical solutions, but the contractual way to manage also this big issue.
Dagur, is that where I mean, innovation isn't just the science, it's the financing to allow the change to happen. Is that where you see the most exciting potentials?
Yeah, and some of the biggest challenges. Because if we use the conventional insurance models, we are paying something, and then a big bill comes along, and everybody has to pay more, kind of in the future. And what we know is that the bill for not doing adaptation in beforehand will be so high. So we need a model to finance it
so we can pay for it now.
Before it happens. Because let's be real. There is a tendency to just cut out flooding in the kind of long list of very small letters in your insurance if it's a big risk that costs much. So I think that we also have to lean on the insurance we call society. And kind of solve this on a grand scale over borders for whole continents, and kind of manage this risk at the level where it is, which is global, because it's such a huge investment needed. But I agree, a lot of these technical solutions are there. They're not all perfect, but I mean, life isn't, but it's still good. And cities can be amazing if we ensure that we are also using it to make them beautiful, more livable and healthy.
Sophie, you have the last word. We've got to think globally, but we're looking for inspiration from you.
Yeah, I know. And we've done so many things in Copenhagen, and we'd love to talk about them. So actually we went out, and now we are working together with Sao Paulo and Johannesburg. And Johannesburg, for instance, we just managed to, now we are into participating about making a cloudburst plan for Johannesburg. And I think that microforesting is probably going to take part of it, but I mean, So
you need to take Xavier on your next field trip.
I mean, we're talking about financial barriers here in the rich part of the world.
Yeah.
What we really need to do now is also to take this discussion to the global south,
yeah, because
they are in much more trouble right now than we are. So all of the things that we have discovered the last 20, 25 years in Copenhagen and Reykjavik and other places, we need to discuss how can we make that happen and scale it up in other cities right now and help each other do that.
Sophie, Xavier, Dagur and Isabelle, thank you very much indeed for talking us through that. Much appreciated.